Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. This is a pretty good crowd for the week of, for the second week in June. We haven't been terribly busy picking out seats, but if you want some, please stop up and fill out a form. That would be great. We still have them, that's for sure. And I'm also, today Lael is going to talk about what weeds tell us about our soil. I hadn't really thought about that very much until I saw that title, but that's interesting to me for her to talk about that. She has some really good references books here. We were just looking at them. And there's one weed that she has here that has the most perfectly square stem that I've ever seen in a weed, I think. I have to say that. So I don't know whichever one you got, where you got those perfect weeds. I was telling these guys that I do judging 4-H in several counties, and one county has a fairly big set of good weeds and bad weeds. It's really hard for me to think about the first one of them. And so you have to for the kids. I mean, really, I got to be looking at it, but I think Lael would do real well with that. Another thing that I am going to tell you, because it'll happen before our next seed library, is we have the 16th tour of lawns and gardens on Saturday, June 22nd. The tickets are sold at the Riverview Reformed Church, which is on Burleigh. That way? I think it's that way. Yeah, it's that way. Riverview, 1700 Burleigh Street. Tickets will be sold from 8 until noon. And tours of lawns will be those hours. We really don't have pre-sales. There are these little cards that are for, in places that sell plants, and a few places that don't necessarily sell plants. Karen Weisler's business, Bodyguard, has them, and so if you want there to look at that. I've gotten several phone calls about this, and I'm sorry, but we do not have pre-sales. It would be too hard for us to manage the money with that, so come to the thing on Saturday. After about 11 o'clock in the morning, we're serving a salad luncheon. These ladies are marvelous cooks. So I didn't realize it was a requirement to be a master gardener to be the best cook in the state. And they are. So, but please try to come. We've got 6 amazing yards. One of them is 10 acres. Oh. Wouldn't you like to keep that clean? They have 4-legged animals that try to help them keep it clean. But they don't always eat the weeds. They eat things that they don't want them to. But anyway, thanks, Lael, for.
Welcome. And, you know, it's a nice day to be inside, isn't it? And tomorrow's going to be even worse, I hear. So summer just hit us. You know, it's like we had winter and then we have summer. It's like, I like the 70-degree temperatures, you know. But I'm very fortunate because my garden, I have actually planted trees all around it. I've been there 6 years now. And I'm from Northwest North Dakota, which is like 640 miles from here. And the plants and weeds up there, the plants not so much, but the weeds are different here than what I was used to up there. And so I'm not as familiar. You know, my whole life I was up there, you know, not my whole life, but I mean, most of my life. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about what weeds tell us about our soil. And to start off with, what's a weed? Basically, it's nothing more than a plant that's in the wrong place. And it seems like they grow abundantly wherever we have made mistakes. Is a tomato a weed? It is for me. And I have raised beds and I have to pull. And I know once in a while my daughter will come out and she'll say, do you want to keep this one? No, I don't want that one. And so a weed is just a misplaced plant, basically. And so the location has to sometimes be changed. This year I redid a bunch of my sunflowers. I had an area on the north corner or the north side of my garden that the tomatoes just didn't do good there at all last year. I put sunflowers. I actually took some that had some of the weed sunflowers, I took those and I threw them around the top, and they're coming along pretty good this year. So we'll see how they do as the summer progresses. Okay, so weeds are specialists. They survive circumstances where our cultivated plants cannot stand up against nature's caprices. Today, we're going to look at three major weed groups: those that thrive in acid soil, those that have crust formation or hard pan, and those that follow human steps in cultivation. Plants that survive in acid soil, which is like 7 or below, is acid. You know, my whole life I fought with this acid-based alkaline stuff. I don't know if we'll ever get it. I'm getting too old to worry about that. But anyway, sorrels, docks, fingerleaf weeds, ladies, thumb, horsetail, hawkweed, knapweed. As far as what I know around my place, I have some sorrel docks and some knapweed. But like I said, the plants here are a bit different than what I'm used to. Okay, the second group, they survive a crust formation and hard pan. That's field mustard, horse nettle, pennycress, morning glory, quackgrass, camomiles, and pineapple weed. I learned that some of the plants that I had no idea what they were. And so I started, trying to figure out, okay, what is this one? What is that one? And, one of the things when you look at pictures, you look something up and you look at the picture and you say, well, is this a foot? Is this 6 inches? How big is this plant? And so today I brought some samples of some of the plants that we're talking about. Your hard pan is formed when your wet soil is turned by the plow, standing water dries up in the surface layers. The hard crust is formed when wet disking or the soil dries up after having been cultivated before it was settled, or as a consequence of too deep a plowing. And fields are planted too frequently. Up there in North Dakota, where I come from, wheat on wheat on wheat on wheat. And the crops don't get, the roots are insufficient to go down through that hard pan. And so what do we do? How do we take care of this? Just so you can see what some of these are, I dried some of them, but it just didn't do it justice. This is a pineapple weed, and this I dried this week, but I picked these just before I came in today. And you can just pass those around if you want to. But this is how big a pineapple is. I thought that was kind of interesting. And let's see, which other one do I have up here? The common pennycress is another one. And it looks totally different dried as it does. I just picked this one before I came. Okay, the third major group is going to be, usually these are spread out with compost manure or wherever we've worked the land. Lamb's quarter, plantain, chickweed, buttercup, dandelion, nettle, prostate knotweed, rough pigweed, and mallow. And it's the increase of weeds of the acid or moist groups that are most alarming to us. So what's a garden weed again? A plant that's undesirable where it grows. It can cause economic losses or ecological damages, and it can create health problems for animals or humans. A noxious weed is any plant that's designated by federal, state, or local government officials as injurious to the public health, agriculture, recreation, wildlife, or property. So what do weeds do to the soil? Not only do weeds protect your bare soil, over time they actually improve the soil. The roots break up soil to improve aeration and extract nutrients, and as weeds' roots die, they, along with the weeds' dead leaves and stems, decompose to enrich the ground with humus. The problem with weeds is they rob. They rob water, they rob nutrients, and they can sometimes rob the sunshine. If large enough, the sunlight gets blocked out and they'll shade our garden plants. Another problem is that they can harbor pests. And horse nettle, for example, it's a relative of your potato that gives your potato beetles a start early in the season before they move on to the potatoes. Lamb's quarter can host verticillium wilt, a disease that can also affect tomatoes. Some weeds secrete chemicals into the soil that inhibit growth of nearby plants. Lamb's quarter is one of those. If you have a cornfield or a lot of tomatoes, the lamb's quarter can actually send out that chemical that's going to depress the growth of those vegetables. So noxious weeds here in South Dakota, the American or common wormwood, Canada thistle, field bindweed, hoary cress, leafy spurge, perennial sow thistle, purple loosestrife, and salt cedar. And let's see, I have a couple of examples of some of these. Let's see here, where do I have? This is just a small piece of thistle. This is the little tiny thistle, and look at the root on that little thistle. So you can imagine this thistle, you can imagine what the root is going to look like on that. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. I saved this in the corner of my garden, and you want to always, before the flowers open, get rid of your weeds somehow, somewhere, somehow, whatever you need to do, but you need to get rid of them. And this is your field sow thistle. I'll just pass it around so you can see the pretty shape of those leaves. That was actually growing out of my, I have some miniature equestrian, and they, that was growing out of the side of their building. Okay, Canada thistle. I've got a story on this one. In 2019, do you guys remember that flood? I had just moved into my place. I've got 24 acres out there, and I had a 4-foot culvert on the northeast corner, and I had they were about 2 or 3 foot culverts next to each other. Well, needless to say, I got drowned out. 24 of my cottonwoods or more drowned. And I'm still battling, trying to get that area cleaned up. But the Canada thistle that came, you know, if you read about it, they say, oh, Canada thistle will grow, 2 to 4 feet. Well, I'm telling you, I had to go buy a DR mower. They were 8, 9 feet tall. And the worst part was, all those culverts I told you about got washed out. The water was running over the road south of me, and that road is high. I have a lot of stories that we could tell about that. But the bottom line is the Canada thistle took off. I even had the county come out, and it's like, I said, how do I get out there? I cannot get out to my pasture. The culverts are all gone. I can't get out there. Well, eventually the water did go down, and I hired a guy to come in and put new culverts in. And I actually ended up putting a couple of gates in so that I could still get to my pasture. So that was better. But this thistle was like up to here, and my sweetheart is there with this big DR trying to, and he'd rear it back and then kind of, and let me tell you, it was horrible. How do you get rid of Canada thistle? Well, they say if you spray it 2 years in a row, it helps. And I've done it, I think this is my 3rd year that I had, but I do have to say part of the pasture now is totally, I haven't found any Canada thistle. This year I had mustard. So anyway, that was quite an experience with that Canada thistle. And that one sample I sent around is just where it's just getting started, and you can see how that root is. Okay, your common wormwood, this gets established in a pasture or range. It's difficult to remove, and it can have significant impacts on the quality of forage for your wildlife and livestock. Okay, everybody has bindweed, don't you? Do you have bindweed at your place? It's just like one of the hardest things with bindweed is the roots just don't go down, above how they wind and wind and wind and go into the plant. Well, the roots of your bindweed actually go through the roots of other plants. So when you're trying to get rid of that bindweed, sometimes you have to take your perennials out too, just to get rid of it. This morning I went out, and I'm not even sure where this one came from, but the flowers were really pretty when I picked them this morning. But one of the things that I appreciate on my raised beds, this was in my strawberries, and see how pretty those roots are? They're really pretty. They go way down, and if you can pull them while they're tender like this, if you keep doing it, pretty soon they'll cut back a little bit till it rains again, right? No, but I mean, it seems like with this, you can go out in the morning, you can go out at noon, you can go out in the evening, and there's still more coming. It just keeps coming. But anyway, I think since most of you have it, you don't need to have this passed around. You know what they look like. You don't want to see any more of those than you have to. Okay, so anyway, it does outcompete, and it is a tangled mess. But you know, one thing I like, it looks like it's covering a big area, but when you go to pull it, it's like one area here. So you just kind of gather it together and pull it out, you know? So I kind of like that about the bindweed. I can't say it. I'm not going to complain about that. Canada thistle, it hurts when you pull, but the bindweed does it so much. Okay, the hoary cress, that's a deep-rooted perennial mustard, and it's highly competitive, and it's very aggressive. Leafy spurge. Do you guys have leafy spurge down here? Up in North Dakota, we had one area on our southeast corner that got leafy spurge, and we had to have that sprayed. But it can get into your cropland, it does withstand cultivation, and it can impact your recreational areas. It is poisonous to some animals and unpalatable to most. It can cause blisters, and low levels will discourage cows from grazing in the pasture. So we don't want that. And salt cedar. We don't have that up there, and I'm thankful. But it's low in nutritive value, and it's unpalatable for cattle. So in order, you have to get rid of it if possible while it's smaller, because I know I was talking to the guy down where I bought a new trimmer, and I bought a metal head for it. And he said, if you cut it, you know, like right next to the soil, he said they do, you know, you do pretty good getting rid of it. So, but you got to keep ahead of it. That's the thing. Okay, field sow thistle, I already sent that around, can be controlled by hand pulling or cutting prior to flowering. This is a picture right beside my shed there. And you know, it was pretty good size. I didn't bring the whole thing in. I just brought a couple things, but it was that size hanging out the side of my building. Because I have a board, they put a board around the base of it. I don't know why they did that, but probably just to give the building more security. I don't know, it's just a shed, so. Okay, invasive weeds. We've talked about some noxious ones. The invasive weeds are non-native invaders that lack natural competitors or enemies to curtail their growth. They can overrun native plants, displace species, and alter ecosystems. And English ivy is one of those. I don't know if, I haven't seen English ivy out at my place, but maybe in town there's some? So you fight with that? Or do you like to have it growing on your stuff?
I've seen it growing.
Okay.
I don't have it.
It can be very beautiful.
Yeah.
But, you know, like a lot of stuff, if it gets, once it gets hold, it can be naughty.
They sell it at some of the greenhouses.
Oh, do they? Well, just control it, you know. So many weeds will stabilize the soil. They will add organic matter, and some are edible and provide habitat for food and wildlife. Weeds are an indicator of your soil's health. If you have a large patch of one kind of weed, your garden is probably trying to tell you something. If you just have occasional, like I had this catnip in the corner, I didn't even know I had catnip in my yard, in my garden, I mean. But anyway, the thistle, I know that, and it's naughty. But anyway, you can't say your soil is hard pan, you can't say it's whatever, unless you have a whole area that is that weed. Because occasionally weeds will come and you know, it might be a rare one. Okay, weeds tell us what's wrong or right with the soil. Weeds with a deep taproot, like your dandelion or burdock, indicate a compacted soil lacking water, air, and nutrients. And one of the things with the thistle and stuff, when you have a taproot like this will actually go down through the hard pan. And if you, like when you're cutting your weeds and that kind of stuff or pulling them in our fields, I don't know, Marlis, do you guys do the combination in your fields as far as planting, you know, a combination of when you plant a cover crop, or do you do the cover crop?
Sometimes, depends on the fall.
Right.
You can't always get it in.
The thing with your cover crops, a lot of times they'll have daikon radishes, they'll have a wide variety of different plants. And if you have one of these in your yard or in your garden, when you cut it, what I'm kind of getting in the habit of doing, good, bad, or indifferent, I know that taproot is going to help to get down through the hard pan, so I'll cut it off just below the top of the soil surface. So it's in the ground, and then if I need to, I'll cover it with mulches or something so that it hopefully won't come back as hard. But if you leave that taproot in there, instead of pulling it, if you pull it, you might disturb a bunch of the bacteria and fungi and everything else in there. But if you cut it, that taproot's still going down, it's still keeping through that hard pan. And so your moisture is going to go down, and if your moisture's going down, nutrients are coming up. And the other thing, if you can do your weeding before you you want to get it before the flowering stage, but take your weeds and use them as a mulch. If you look at your compost, as long as there's no seeds. If there's seeds, please don't do that. But anyway, the taproots do help get the moisture down. Okay, weeds are a symptom of the troubled system. And before you pull a weed, consider what it's telling you. Is your soil lacking nutrients? Was excessive fertilizer used? Is soil not draining well, or is your soil compacted? One of the things with fertilizer can do quite a bit of damage if it's too strong. So if you're going to do fertilizer, go on the weak side for one thing. But for another, don't do your rapid acting fertilizer. Do a slow release. Like if you buy a Miracle-Gro or something like that, it says slow release. You want a slow release fertilizer. You don't want to burn your plants. Okay, bindweed, we talked about that already. It grows in your crusty, compacted soil. Your common chicory can be an indicator of your rich soil, high in nitrogen, and it will grow well in your alkaline, compacted soil. Chickweed, and I'm not sure if I have that or not. There's some areas that I think I might, but I don't know for sure. I'm not a plant expert that way. Chickweed can produce a large number of seeds under your cold temperatures, and the rapidly colonizes any cool, moist area before winter or spring crops can become competitive. So it can limit your winter vegetable production by competing for space, light, and nitrogen. And ground cell is another thing. You guys that are familiar with these plants, do you know if you have ground cell around here? Because it's actually, it can be indicative of good soil. And how many of you don't have dandelions? But they have a nice taproot. So that's a good thing. But they usually indicate poor soil, low in calcium, and compacted. The dandelion taproots are doing the job of breaking up the soil, which is wonderful. Dock or goldenrod, that grows in wet, poorly drained soils. And your ferns, I don't have too many ferns around my place. The pretty fern it's a weed, and it will propagate and overpower other plants. Have you guys experienced that, a fern like that? Maybe we just don't have enough moisture here, huh? A henbit, that indicates high nitrogen. Your knapweed indicates rich soil high in potassium. Your knotweed grows where the ground is compacted. And that's one of the ones that I have, I know for sure. Lamb's quarter is a soil that's rich and high in nitrogen. And I know up in North Dakota, we always had lamb's quarter north of our barn. And when we cleaned the barn and the corrals, we'd pile the manure out there. But it always grew. And so in the spring, we had our spinach was lamb's quarter. I loved it. I thought it was great. But just a little bit of, steam it and put a little bit of lemon juice. That was good. Okay, moss of most kinds indicate a soggy, acidic soil. The mullein, it grows in acidic soil with low fertility. You might need to make your soil more alkaline. Mustard grows in dry, sandy soil, high in phosphorus. Your ostrich fern, ferns are oftentimes where it's a fertile location. Your wood sorrel indicates low calcium and high magnesium. Your oxeye daisies, they grow in acidic, often soggy soil with poor fertility. Your pearly everlasting, isn't that a pretty name? It grows in acid soil that's low in nutrients. Peppergrass indicates your sweet soil. And I sent that sample of peppergrass around that little, and it, you know, when you look at it, the peppergrass is actually the size of grass. You know, it was about that long, about that tall. And I thought that was kind of interesting that it, and that, I have to say, I have an invasion of that along my whole, what is it, my northeast side of the driveway there. I mean, it's about that tall and it is everywhere, but it's along the drive and it's compact, and we drive over that all the time with the trucks and the bale, or the, when we load bales and stuff, we're right over the top of it. And I'm just glad I know what it is now. And it's not hurting anything. Okay, your plantain, I have quite a few of those. Your plantain grows on compacted sour soil with low fertility, and it often indicates heavy clay, but in my case, I think it just indicates that it's been driven over and driven over and driven over. Like prostate knotweed, it has evolved to survive being trampled and can grow in heavily trafficked garden paths. And I've seen, you know, some of my plantain is smaller, but I've seen it, you know, big. It gets bigger. So, and I don't think I brought any of that with me today. Redroot pigweed grows in rich soil with high levels of readily available nitrogen. Your purslane, how many of you tasted purslane? It's mild, but it's just interesting. I don't know, for some reason that whenever I think of purslane, I think of my grandma. Her name was Pearl. And for some reason, that just kind of, it's like, it's mild, and she was mild, and, you know, anyway. It prefers rich soil, and it is an indicator of your high phosphorus. Quackgrass. It can grow in your heavy clay or compacted soil. Your Queen Anne's lace grows where the soil's poor, but it's on the sweet side. Your ragweed indicates low fertility, and I know I've got some of that around. Stinging nettles. They grow in rich acidic soil. I don't think I have any on my place that I've seen, but up in North Dakota, we had it a lot. Sheep sorrel indicates dry, sandy, acidic soil depleted in nutrients, low in calcium, low in nitrogen. And it's kind of more of a pale color. Your nitrogen, everything is really dark, dark green. But with your sheep sorrel, it's a lighter color. Your yarrow, that grows where your potassium and fertility are low. The soil's sandy. Yarrow is found on poor, dry, sandy soil where not very much else is going to grow. Okay, crabgrass. That's where the soil's been depleted of nutrients, it's low in calcium. It will usually grow in thin or bare areas of your lawn. It can crowd out good grass. And if one of the things with the crabgrass, once you have a hard frost, it turns brown. The rest of the grass can be green, and it'll be brown and ugly. So crabgrass spreads by seed and from the rootings of the nodes on the soil. Seeds remain viable for at least 3 years in the soil. Mulch, hoe, hand pull to control it. And solarization also works. And you say, okay, so what's solarization? Well, this is a picture of solarization in my yard, in my garden. I had a whole bunch, you know, talking about this Canada thistle, I've had that field sprayed, killed a bunch of my trees, killed some of my currants a couple of years ago. And so this year when he went out, Russ kind of said, please keep away from the garden. But anyway, what I did with this, I wanted to get rid of some of the thistle, and I also get rid of some of the bindweed if possible. And so what I did, ideally, you want to do this, you know, when the temperatures are warm, and this is just a clear plastic, and it's fairly thick. I got as thick a plastic as I could, or you can put 2 layers down. But basically, and then I've started some of my squash along the side here. So I've got squash and sweet potatoes, and not squash. Yeah, squash, sweet potatoes, and these ones that are coming here are my blue Hubbard squash, and they're on the side because I want to use them as a trap crop. And my sister loves that squash, so I planted some of that for her. But anyway, you can see here where the Canada thistle, under the plastic, you can see that it's dying. Yay! So the heat can kill or weaken many soil-borne pathogens, nematodes, seeds, seedlings, while also reducing the population of your insect pests. Solarization can be used on any soil type including rock soil, and can be done on a small or a large scale. And 4 years ago or so, I had an area that I wanted to turn into a garden. The people that I bought the place from had a small garden. It was, maybe that big. I don't know. It wasn't very big. Anyway, when you see an area where there's a lot of weeds or a lot of, you think there's going to be a problem, solarization is one of the best things you can do. I know, I don't remember, do you remember how long they told us when we went over to, was it at least 3 weeks, but I think longer, it can go longer than that. I am actually planning to leave my plastic on all summer, because I know I did that in a small area of my garden, like I said, 4 years ago, and then I ended up putting raised beds in. But anyway, it does help to get rid of the weeds. And after I did that, I took my broad fork and I did an area probably that big of squash. And with the broad fork, do you know what a broad fork is? It's a fork, it's about that wide, and it has probably 5 tines, and you step on it and you just wiggle it back and forth. You don't dig up the whole thing. And I had the best squash crop that year. It was just beautiful, because that had been prairie, so that was really good. Okay, weeds. They're not all bad, but they do need to be controlled. Rule number 1, never let them seed. Weed early when your weeds are young, pull them out or cut them off below soil line. Keep your digging shallow so new weed seeds aren't brought to the surface. Clean the gardening tools when you move from one area to another. I'm guilty, I don't. I'm bad about that. I'll wipe them off, but I don't clean them good. Be careful when you buy your material from a garden center. Try and get weed-free mulch, manure, compost, and soil. If you have time before planting, cover your weedy patch with landscape fabric, black plastic, or an old carpet. Once you have seeded, do not till your garden area if it's filled with perennial weeds. This would break up the underground tubers and it would spread the weeds around. Apply mulch, and a lot of people say 3 inches, a minimum of 3 inches of mulch. Weed seeds have a harder time pushing through your mulch, and it can block the sunlight. Now, you can use grass clippings, wood chips, straw. One of the things that I use, last year I did not. Last year we had gone to the International Master Gardener thing, and a couple of speakers said, just spread your plants, spread everything, do a whole combination of stuff. Well, my tomatoes didn't do as good last year. And so this year again, I am going to use, from Gurney's, it's a mulch. This is a plastic mulch, and they say it's reusable. It's so thin, I don't, but my tomatoes have done so well. I'll put this on them, and what I do is I get everything ready, plant my tomatoes, and if I'm going to fertilize, I'll fertilize, then I put my drip lines in, and then I cover or put this around, but I do basil and marigolds and nasturtiums mixed in, so they have a little variety of plants. But I really like this. It's a plastic though, and ideally you want to use a fabric. I have NRCS sells big rolls of a fabric, a black fabric that you can cut up, and the moisture will go through that, which is good. But with the mulches, one of the things that, here's my little thingy here. Gotta touch on that one too. Gotta find my sheet really quick. Okay, this one talking about the University of North Dakota is, these are the different universities are doing studies to tackle weed problems. University of North Dakota is doing an alternative cropping sequence and flame weeding. Have you heard of flame weeding? Mm-hmm. Well, I bought a torch and my sweetheart said, don't you dare go out there with that thing. So I haven't. But anyway, the weeds are controlled by an intense heat. And both the weeding or by doing the natural alternate cropping stuff and the flame weeding, they produce desired foods, and they protect the environment, they enhance the sustainability of the agri-system. In Arkansas, soybean is the dominant crop, cash crop, I'll get it right. But soil erosion, water availability, and herbicide-resistant weeds are big issues there. And so the University of Arkansas did a 3-year study where they blended cover crops and no-till practices, and that did improve the yields of the soybeans by more than 10%, just doing the cover crops and no-till. That improved it 10%, which is good. Successful implementation of cover crops by farmers increases the soybean crop, reduces input costs, and saves farmers $30 to $60 per acre. I mean, that's a significant amount that it's saving. In Connecticut, they use some plastic mulch to reduce weeds, but with the plastic mulch, it's pros and cons. The labor costs are increased, and it's not recyclable. So the University of Kentucky is working on a biodegradable plastic mulch, and once they're done with the year, they just plow it into the ground, and that eliminates recycling. It is sustainable, and the labor cost concerns about the plastic mulch because it's biodegradable. So it's less labor, and it eliminates removal costs. So those are just some of the things that some of the universities are studying that I ran across. The other thing, when we're talking about weeds, we talked about don't till. If you are going to work up the soil, you know, they say go 2 inches deep, no more. But one of the things that, which school is this? Let's see. It just says the Department of Agriculture, Rosemont, Minnesota. They're doing some nighttime tilling. You know, you have night vision and everything like that. Well, these guys are working on, I don't know how they do it though. I mean, the article talked about it, but they go out and if they have to till, they do it at night, because then as soon as those weeds see any kind of light, boom, they start taking off. So these guys are practicing now, trying to do tillage at night, and they just talk about different things that they can do, different ways they do it. And they did say that emergence of the weeds went down. Said we have seen reductions in weed emergence as great as 80% by doing night tillage. So that's pretty, you know, I don't know if you want to go out at night and work in your garden, but if you got a headlight on, you're gonna make those weeds come alive anyway. So just by that little tiny bit. And it said some of the studies they did were some of the grasses and green, yellow, and giant foxtail. They did large seeded broadleaf weeds like your cocklebur, your giant ragweed and velvet leaf, and your small seeded broadleaf like your lamb's quarters, ragweed, wild mustard, nightshade, smartweed, and pigweed. And this one guy says he tilled at night between 11 p.m. and midnight. And if he did daytime tillage, he applied a herbicide, Roundup, between 2 and 4 p.m. It says an evaluation of the two methods was made, counting weeds that came up at 15, 30, and 50 days. And he says many farming operations like planting and cultivating corn can be tricky, even in daylight, let alone at night. I mean, can you imagine going out at night and trying to, have you ever gone to the draft horse show where they're going between the rows with the corn? And anyway, so that can be a difficult thing. The other thing is you want to water right around your plants. A drip system is ideal, or I put a new asparagus bed in this year and I used soaker hoses underneath. I put the soaker hoses in, and then I put the black fabric from NRCS, and then I cut the holes and put my new asparagus plants in, and that keeps the moisture in the soil, which is really good. But that way, my watering, you do have to, with a soaker hose, you have to keep it going, but if you go down your line, it's not like you're watering the whole field. You want to establish a weed-free perimeter around your garden. I have one of those. My grandma used to have those round aluminum, whatever they are, but a strawberry tower. Well, I had to get a strawberry tower just in memory of my grandma Pearl. Anyway, the bindweed seems to just love that thing. I mean, it goes up through everything, and I try and keep it from around. I even put some stones around it, but that bindweed is just everywhere in my strawberries. But I'm still getting a good crop this year. I can't complain too much. But it's good if you can do a weed-free perimeter around your garden. Mow or mulch the area, pull or dig up your weeds as they emerge, and that's going to reduce the number of new weed seeds in the area that you're trying to protect. Perennial weeds, of course, come back year after year. They are more difficult to control. If you have roots, dig them up. Underground tubers, rhizomes, try not to leave any fragments. So while you're working on those, if possible, I had some really good weeding days after all that rain. Boy, you go out and you can just, it's just fun to play in that soil, isn't it? But anyway, you want to cut off the emerging green part of the weed with your hoe or mower. Repeat the process quickly each time it regrows. The underground plant parts will become weakened and eventually may die. Try to remove the taproot if you can. And like I said, you might have to do it several times. When pulling out weeds, wait till the soil's moist. You'll find that you don't spend as much time weeding in subsequent years. And I know my raised beds, I've been very fortunate. They get a little bit of bindweed, but the ones that are on the east side where that thistle came in, oh, terrible. So this year, I put in potatoes and peas in my one raised bed. And of course, I have one end of it in garlic and onions. And I have to say, that's probably the only bed that's totally pretty much, you pull all those little tiny thistle, and I'm really surprised at how fortunate I've been. I haven't mulched that bed at all this year. And praise the Lord, it's coming along. Look at your bare ground. It's apt to be blown away or washed away by water. Thankfully, ground isn't bare for long before lamb's quarter, pigweed, smartweed, and other plants we normally call weeds rush in to clothe the soil and protect it from the elements. Not only do weeds protect the bare soil, but over time they do improve the soil. The roots break up soil to improve aeration and extract nutrients, and as weeds' roots die, they, along with the weeds' dead leaves and stems, decompose to enrich the ground. Weeds probably correct mineral imbalances also, and contrast the diversity of plants in an uncultivated field with the uniformity of plants in a weed-free cornfield. And when you look at that cornfield, the corn is the only thing that is growing, because the other stuff has been killed probably by they don't want the weeds to grow, but actually if it can have diverse plants, it would be good. The uncultivated field, each plant draws different balance of nutrients out of the soil. In the cultivated cornfield, corn plants are taking up only what they need, and a few weeds there might take up the slack, balance out the proportional excess of certain nutrients left in the soil. But around here it's soybeans, corn, and that's okay, because that way the roots are going down at a different level. A layer of any weed-free organic material enriches and improves the soil while it keeps the weeds in check. Possibilities would include your wood chips, sawdust, grass clippings, straw, and pine needles. What do you guys use for your mulch? Grass clippings, as long as it hasn't been sprayed. Yeah. I get straw from North Dakota, and so my sweetheart's back and forth all the time anyway, and so he'll bring me down loads of straw, which I love. One of the best ways to maintain your upper hand with weeds is to avoid turning over the soil. You never want to do it if you can help it. Rototiller, plow, garden, your garden fork or shovel. Buried within every soil are weed seeds, and they're dormant. Turning over the ground exposes them to the light and air, and we talked about that. Many weeds make good eating, and purslane is one of those. I like the lamb's quarter. What are plants you like to eat? Do you grow any or accidentally that you might like to eat?
My mom did a really good dandelion salad.
Cool.
Bacon, grease, kind of.
Yeah.
And vinegar,
Uh-huh.
brown sugar, and kind of mixed it all together.
Good.
It was very tasty, but it had to be early.
Right. That's what the lamb's quarter, you have to get it early. If it gets, big, it is not good. It is not good. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I talked so fast just because I had so many slides and I wanted to make sure I got through most of my stuff. Anyway, it says, enjoy sweet revenge as you turn your pigweed, lamb's quarter, purslane, and other edible weeds into part of your next meal. Now, Karen and Carla are going to be with us on August 13th, and they're going to talk about plants as medicine. And there's a lot of material on a lot of the stuff that I've gone over today, but there are a lot of the plants that we've talked about today are edible, and some of them, the whole plant is edible. That pineapple weed, I don't know if I have my notes on that, but the pineapple weed, have you guys ever tasted that? Yes.
I was gonna ask about stinging nettles
The stinging nettles, yes.
as an edible.
Uh-huh. I have not eaten it, but I know that have you heard of stinging nettles as far as food?
Yes, I attended a master gardener thing down in Nebraska just this spring, and she talked about all kinds of weeds but you have to get them early before they start stinging.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she dries them and I can't remember what she used them for.
Yeah, I had it as a tea one time.
Yes.
I need to be very careful because I broke out with hives.
Uh-oh.
So I personally do not, I say don't do it.
Right.
It's very painful and miserable, so.
Well, one of the things too, whenever you're going to try something new, do it in extreme moderation, just to try it. Yes.
I drank it almost every day in spring and no results, adverse results, so it must be the person's body.
Everybody's allergic to something, it
Right.
seems like.
Spring tonic cleansing.
Uh-huh. Well, and a lot of the things, like I said, that I was reading on that pineapple weed, I can't remember everything about it, but I don't know if I have it in my notes here really quick. But I thought that was kind of interesting because it was the pineapple weed is it can be like a sedative, and it can be like a anti-anxiety. It's like, I better go pick some of these weeds out there and do something with this. But anyway, most of the vegetables that we have in our gardens, they prefer a pH of like 6 or 7, which is a little bit mildly acidic. But blueberries, they say just don't do good around here because they want acid in the soil, the blueberries do. And any of you guys have blueberries that you survive around here? I planted some, but they sure just didn't survive.
I had some in a pot.
In a pot.
And I acidified that pot.
Right, so you can be very good about,
Berries on
yeah. This year, my elderberries are really doing good. The currants look like they're doing fair. But the plants that really like acid, which I did not know this, nasturtiums is one of the ones that likes acidic soil. Wax begonias, rhododendrons, your blueberries, and magnolia like your acid, whereas your alkaline ones, your campanula, which I don't know what that is, the geraniums, your lavender, and your dianthus like more alkaline. So the question too is your annuals. Your annuals usually like to have a higher bacteria in the soil, whereas your perennials, like they like more of the, when I'm looking at the fungus. Anyway, so if you're planting them both, I mean, I have both in my garden, I have both in my flowers. So what do? Well, keep it about 7, I guess, is what I would recommend. But if you really are having trouble with some of your soil, do get it tested. Well, we don't have a place locally, but I know the SDSU has different, I don't have that with me today, but they do have different places you can get your soil tested and send them in. So, and if you have a plant that you're having a problem with, you can send that in too. Did you ever find out you had a plant that you were questioning a while back? What was it?
My tomatoes?
No, it was when we were at Beersford, you talked about a plant that you were sending in or something, because you had talked to them up at SDSU. Anyway, I'm just curious if you found out what it was, or what problem you were having with it. I don't recall.
I don't remember that. Are you sure that wasn't Kathy's carrots?
No, it was you. Because she wasn't at Beersford with me.
Oh, parsnips.
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
I did not send anything in, no.
Okay. Well, I know you had talked about that you were trying to figure out something about a weed, but I don't remember. Okay. Now, as far as some of the things that, other than I looked up the extension office and stuff online, but I also got some books that I read. Weeds, Guardians of the Soil, Weeds, What They Tell Us. This one I didn't do much reading because it's Control Without Poisons, and we basically have done some of that. This book was kind of boring, but yet it had a lot of good information. When Weeds Talk, and it was very expensive, but it has a lot of charts in this one, and Anyway, just some good ones. This one, I love this book. A lot of information, but it's like, takes you back to college days, and it's like pretty intense. But I enjoyed it. I haven't finished all of it. I've got almost all of it done. But anyway, there's some good books, good information. And a couple sheets I have up here. This one's on cover crops for home vegetable gardens. And then this one talks about lawn and landscapes and stuff. And a lot of the stuff, some of the stuff came from Florida. And I thought, that's really not appropriate for us up here. 640 miles up to North Dakota, and there's a lot of difference, between the two areas. So anyway, I know I went through a lot of stuff really quick, and I don't know a lot about this, but I learned a lot while I was learning. So that was good. Do you have any questions that I can help you with, or, we've got a lot of really smart master gardeners in here, so. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And if you want to see this of course is the thistle with the taproot, and this is that perfectly square stem. Isn't that fun how there's so many different things? This is catnip though, and it smells good. But see, the roots on this is totally different than your taproot.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of fun. You want to have a variety. One of the things that these roots came out of my raised beds, on my strawberry raised bed. And look at these the roots on this thing, they just go down and down and down. Just kind of interesting to be able to see the different roots. And some of the things like they will go out 14 feet